Namaskar, Maharishikaa ji.
Namaskar, Anand.
I'm very much delighted. It's a pleasure to be here. This is my first time here, and I started listening to you very recently, about a couple weeks ago. YouTube dashboard just showed one of the links, and I very systematically getting drawn and fascinated by the talks and the substance. I have been practicing a type of spiritual system which is more or less in the line of like a typical Hindu / Sanatani system. So just three entities like soul, super soul, and the war drama, where I had to interact with other souls and other events. But the concept which I heard here, the soul is something else, but I have to take a slim identity. There, I am a little bit intrigued. This concept seems fascinating to me, and I'm trying to internalize the experience and trying to do some kind of practice, taking a slim identity, and soul is a different thing. But somehow, I'm not able to do that. I was able to do that when I was considering myself soul and the body just as a costume, like the typical conventional wisdom. But my responsibility is dealing with the drama, that I have to play a hero role in the drama. I felt some difficulty that I'm adding one more thing, basically, with like soul, super soul, and drama, one more thing like this slim identity. So I would like to hear your thoughts and wisdom and directions.
The idea that, you are the soul and this body is something which is like the costume of the soul is difficult actually to explain to yourself if you were to look at it logically. Why I say that is that you do require a body in order to think. There is no thinking possible without the body. So very technically seen, it is the body that is thinking. The soul doesn't think. So the soul cannot say that it is the soul. So you are Anand, and the person that is saying or thinking, I am the soul and this body is just a costume, is essentially identifying with the soul, which means technically that the body is identifying with the soul. But if the body is identifying with the soul, then that would mean that the soul and the body are the same thing, which obviously they're not. Because if they were, then that duality wouldn't be there in that statement, I am the soul and this is the body, which is the costume of the soul. So it is actually illogical, such a statement. It doesn't hold, because the I that is being spoken about here, Anand, the I who is the soul, is only able to even say that because there is a body. So it's the body that's speaking. If the soul is the I, then that would actually mean that it's able to think. It's only if you're able to think that you're able to make that statement. You take your body called Anand and give it that identity, that slim identity. If you give it more than that, then it grows into ego. So you keep the identity slim. And yes, your idea of there being soul, you don't have so much of a confusion actually if you just try to see it from the point of view that what you call the super soul would be what in Sanskrit would be Paramatma. You can even go so far as to call it Brahman. And what you call the soul would be the Antaraatman, the inner residing Atman or soul. And then you have the body, which you call a costume, but you can shift your idea about the body and realize that it's not just a costume, it is you. The non-dual is experienced within the body by acknowledging a duality, and then through the process of acknowledging that it is the body that is you, that is bending to the soul, at one point, a oneness is experienced. But it's experienced within the body. You don't go into the soul and say, I am the soul, because that is ego speaking. All the great masters who said, I am that, said that because they were no more in touch with their bodies. The consciousness had moved outside the system. It had moved into the soul, let's put it that way. And they were identifying with the soul, but actually, it was not them that was doing that, it was ego speaking. It's a very strong statement to make, but it's important to understand that if you want to tune into this teaching, you have to leave behind the idea that you are the soul, because you are not the soul. Anand is not the soul. Anand is a name given to a body. The soul is eternal, no question about it. But the body is not. And the soul has no name. It is nameless. And that might help you resolve this conundrum, because without that resolution, there will continue to be the conflict. And if you're able to think, you can also think logically, especially when it has to do with spirituality. If one wants to think something through, one has to be able to apply reason to the entire process that one has begun. So to come back to the beginning of your description of what you've been practicing before you came here, you are the body. There is the soul. The soul is eternal. You are in surrender to the soul and act as its instrument in this world. You keep the identity very slim. Anand, son of your mother's name and born where you were born. Keeping the identity slim, you bend in surrender to the Antar-Guru, the inner master, the Antaraatman, the inner residing soul. And you learn to discern between the loud noise of the ego and the impulse of the soul. And you train, Anand, train Anand to bend in surrender to the soul. Again and again and again and again and again. And at one point, there is no I left anymore. That is when there is the experience of the non-dual, but it is not outside the system. It is not identifying with the soul. There simply is nothing that is identifying with anything. And that is the non-dual experience. There's just isness. This thing is. Not I am that, I am this. It's just isness. This just is. Yes.
Thank you, Maharishikaa ji.
Namaskaram, Anand.
You are invited to a live online satsang with Maharishikaa Preeti this Sunday. To know more, click the link in the description below.